Good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov. Welcome to our Parsha class, Parsha of Shemos. So we weren't here last week, and a lot happened since we were gone. We missed a lot. So we're starting a new book, the second book of the Chumash of the Torah, the book of Shemos, book of Exodus, as they call it. And it's a new era. It's a new era. First book, book of Bereshis, speaks about from the beginning of the creation all the way through the story of the Jewish people, pretty much. Even though Abraham was the first Jew, but this is where we begin the story of becoming a nation and receiving the Torah. So the story of becoming a nation always begins with hardships. You don't just become a nation. First, you got to suffer, right? When you want to bring out something beautiful, you want to bring out a beautiful diamond, first you got to go through a rigorous cleansing process. And it can be different. It could be difficult. So in order to become a nation, we have to go through some difficult moments. And this is where we open up. Jacob passes away in last week's parsha. Joseph, the last of the brothers, Levi, they all pass away. They all die. And Pharaoh is a new Pharaoh. Whether it is literally a new Pharaoh, meaning the old Pharaoh died and now there's a new Pharaoh in place, or a new attitude, exactly. He made as if he forgot all the kindness and all that Joseph and the Jewish people contributed to the Egyptian society, and it's like a new person. So the story of the enslavement of the Jewish people in Egypt, it's a fascinating story. We all know the general outline of the story. Some of us perhaps know more details of the story, but very interestingly, here's one of the areas where it's fascinating to read the story based on the traditional commentaries, and even beyond the commentaries, going through the Talmud and the Midrash, understanding the story. I mean, there's so much that is not written. It's almost more is unwritten than is actually written. If you read it based on like the Midrashic and Talmudic narrative, it's a fascinating story. It's a long story, many details in the story of exactly what happened over there. We're not going to go through everything. Even the basic commentaries like Rashi do mention some of those ideas, but go online. There's other books you can read. The whole different story. The whole different story. But basically, we have Pharaoh. We have the Jewish people. Jewish people from when Jacob comes down to Egypt till they leave Egypt is 210 years. And from those 210 years, less than 100 years were actually enslavement. Were actually enslavement. We know that Moses was 80 years old when he spoke to Pharaoh, right? And Moses was already born, already when he was a young man. He already said that he saw the enslavement. So we know it was 80 years, but it was a little more than that. I'm not sure exactly how many years, 85 years, 95 years, different opinions. But the Jewish people were being enslaved. In which way? This King Pharaoh, he started uh, forcing the Jewish people to build these cities for him, Pisom and Ramses, which were basically an impossible job because the ground is almost like New Orleans, times 10, where you couldn't build on the ground. It would always sink in, and they didn't have piling the way they have over here. So they would build, and they come a week later, and that's it. It's gone. It's in the ground. You got to build again, and then build again. It wouldn't. It was like fruitless. It was like pointless, right? And we know even someone who is doing hard labor, if they see the fruit of their labor, at least that gives them the push. Okay, at least I'm doing something. I'm producing something, being productive. But if it's pointless, right? If I hire you and tell you, okay, instead of turning the mill with your hand, which is very difficult, just do this on your own in my home. Just make the same motions, and I'll pay you double the amount. You can't do that for too long because it's pointless. I'm not doing anything, right? I'm not accomplishing anything. Um, they say the story where there was this guy in prison. I think it was in Russia. I'm not sure if the story actually ever happened, but The story was that this person was in prison, and they told him to turn this wheel. And it said behind the wall, there's this big mill, and you turning the wheel is producing whatever it's producing. And for years, every day he's been turning this wheel. And then after many years, he's released from prison, and he goes out of prison and he goes to the other side of the wall, and he sees there's nothing there. So that was more painful, more difficult than all the years of the hard labor, knowing that he's not producing anything. And this is what Pharaoh was doing to the Jewish people, forcing them to build these towers, build these cities, and it was pointless because it was impossible to build. But this is what they had to do, and it was very difficult, very difficult physical labor. And as the Torah says, their lives were very bitter. And one day, Pharaoh hears from his stargazers that a little Jewish boy is going to be born soon, who's going to be the savior of the Jewish people. He's going to be the one to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. And so he makes a decree. The decree is he has to kill all the Jewish boys. He starts trying to get buy-in, use the Jewish midwives, Shifra and Pua, who the real names were Yocheved and Miriam. It turns out to be that they happened to be, Yocheved was later to be Moshe's mother, and Miriam was Moshe's sister. This is before Moshe was born. So Yocheved was, interestingly, she was the youngest grandchild of Yaakov. In fact, when Yaakov descends to Egypt from Israel, it says that they were a household of 70, right? There were 70 in the family, including children and grandchildren. And Yocheved was actually born right then. As they were entering into Egypt, that's when she was born. She was like the youngest of the 70 of the household. And that's how we know, by the way, how many years the Jewish people were in Egypt. Because Yocheved was born right then. And she was 120 years old. No, she was 130 years old when she gave birth to Moshe. It was obviously a miracle, right? She gave birth to Moshe at 130 years old. And Moshe was 80 years old when he spoke to Pharaoh. So that's how we know that there was 210 years that the Jewish people were in Egypt.
Who is Yocheved's father?
Yocheved was Levi's father, Levi. Right. So Levi, he had a daughter as they were going into Egypt. So Moshe was a grandson of Levi on his mother's side, and his father was also from Levi. They were relatives. His father's name was Amram, and Amram was a grandchild of Levi. In other words, then Amram married his aunt. His father's sister was Yocheved. And that was very, in the Torah, in Torah times, that wasn't so uncommon. So Moshe was a grandchild and a great grandchild of Levi at the same time, right? Okay. So either way, so Yocheved is a midwife, and so is her daughter Miriam, and they're summoned by Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, "Listen, I need your help. Whenever you're called by a Jewish mother that they're about to give birth, if the baby is a boy, you got to kill the baby on the spot. If it's a girl, let her live." And of course, they don't heed Pharaoh's words, and regardless, they let the baby live. So they're summoned back to the palace. And Pharaoh says, "What's going on over here? See, all the Jewish babies are living." He said, "Listen, the Jewish women are like animals." What does that mean, like animals? So there are two explanations what that means. Either animals, as in Jacob when he gave blessings last week's Parsha, which we skipped. He always compares every one of his children to an animal. like a lion, right? As part of his blessings. But what they meant with that was that just like animals don't need midwives, animals give birth on their own. They figure it out on their own. And so these Jewish mothers, the time we come, the baby's born already. So we don't have a chance to kill the babies, right? The time with that. So Pharaoh basically realized that they're not partners in crime. You can't use these midwives. And they were actually rewarded. God gave them lots of rewards because of it. But he makes a new decree. And the new decree is that all Jewish boys have to be thrown into the Nile River. And he takes his men to to uh, to implement this new decree. And it was they had this crazy system going on. They were monitoring every woman. They knew exactly when they become pregnant and when they're due and when to expect the baby, and then to come to their house at the ninth month to take the baby. And they had this different methods of how to find the baby because the Jewish mothers were hiding their babies. So they would take Egyptian babies and bring them to the house, and they would pinch them, make them cry. And when the baby would cry, what happens when one baby cries? The other one starts crying, right? So then they would hear the babies and wherever they were hiding or being hidden, and they would take the babies and throwing them into the Nile River. So this was a terrible, terrible time for the Jewish people, where I don't know what the number was, but thousands of Jewish boys were being thrown into the Nile River. The Midrash actually tells us that there were many miracles that were happening at the same time. That these baby boys that were being thrown into the Nile were not actually drowning; they were not being killed. Miraculously, they were being saved, and they were being raised in a nearby field, and eventually they came out. The whole long midrash, a fascinating midrash about how miraculously these boys were being saved. But on the surface, this was a terrible thing. The Jewish boys were being killed, and then it got so bad where at one point Pharaoh himself became ill, and his doctors told him that the only solution for your illness is you have to bathe in Jewish blood. You have to literally bathe in Jewish blood. And this is actually, I just read recently, they actually have this in some ancient Egyptian files. There's some, it's not the source of this is not only the Torah, it's actually also in the Egyptian files that Pharaoh became ill and he was slaughtering Jewish babies and bathing in their blood. It got that bad. So the Jewish people were just at their wits' ends. This was just a horrible time for the Jewish people. At the same time, Moses is born. Moses is born to who? To Yocheved, right? This midwife. She gives birth to a little baby boy. I think in other years we spoke about this dialogue between Yocheved and his Amram, where at one point they separated because they felt, why should they have children in this situation? And they got back together. They had a baby. She was obviously, it was a miracle. She was an older woman already. She's 130 years old. They have their baby. They had the baby a little early, so they were able to hide him. Eventually, they put him into a basket. They put him into the Nile River. He's picked up. He's picked up by the daughter of Pharaoh, by Batya, and brought into the palace. And this is where he was raised. And at one point, he killed an Egyptian. He was afraid that the Pharaoh will hear about it, so he had to escape. He escapes the palace and he escapes Egypt. Now, the Torah doesn't give us an exact, like, chronological, detailed, to know exactly what happened every year of Moshe's life. We know when he was born, he was a young lad at one point, and then he leaves Egypt, and the next time we know him is when he's 80 years old, right? So there's a whole lifetime of Moshe's youth that we don't really know much about, right? We know him as an 80-year-old, and we know him as perhaps a young adult. So there are various midrashim that talk about his youth. Some say that he actually became he went to Midian, and he actually became the general of their army. Like, he had a very successful career outside of this whole story of the Jewish people. But eventually, he ends up in Midian at the well, and he sees that there are these daughters who are trying to give their cattle to drink, but they're last in line. And he finds out that basically these are the daughters of Yisro, or Jethro in English. We'll say Yisro as we say it in Hebrew. And who was Yisro? Yisro was this man lived in Midian, and at one point he was like a priest of Midian. He was someone that people looked up to because he was very involved in the various um, idol worshiping religions at the time, and he was like a priest. People looked up to him. But then he actually left that all, and he kind of found God. He found Judaism, or whatever Judaism meant at the time. He found the God of the Jews, and because of that, people disguised
People.
the people. What's the word I'm looking for? People, didn't like him anymore, and therefore they didn't allow their, people didn't want to work for him as shepherds, and even their daughters, they were always last in line. So Moshe comes and he helps and he gives their cattle to drink, and they come home and they say, "Daddy," he asked, "Why are you home early today?" He said, "Oh, there's this young Egyptian man came and helped us." He says, "He didn't bring him home? I mean, who is this man?" So they find him, they bring him home, and basically he ends up marrying one of the daughters, Tzipporah. There's an interesting midrash over here. Um, we always talk about Moshe's staff, his stick, right? He took his staff and he hit the water, right? Always his staff is a very important artifact in the story of Moses. So there's an interesting midrash that talks about where does the staff come from. I haven't told you before, I don't remember. That there was this stick, this wooden stick that was like stuck really hard in the yard next to Yisro's house, and it was impossible to get out. And Yisro had this thing. It says, any man who comes and is able to retrieve, able to take out this piece of wood, could marry my daughter. And many, many, many people tried, but everyone was unsuccessful. Moshe came and he was successful. He was able to get the staff out, the stick out, and he married Zipporah. And that was the stick that he always used for years to come. Interesting midrash. What's the significance of that? What's the meaning of that? Perhaps for a different time. So he becomes a shepherd. He becomes a shepherd for his father-in-law's sheep. And he's pretty good at it. Interestingly, we find that two of our perhaps most important or most famous Jewish leaders, Moshe and King David, both of them were shepherds before they became leaders of Jewish people. And the Talmud tells us, and the Midrash tells us, that not just by chance. It's because God saw the way they were a shepherd, the way they pastured their cattle, their sheep, how much care they gave to each and every individual sheep. They didn't see them as a herd, which is all the sheep together, but each one separately. And they give different stories of how they took care of each one, every sheep, to make sure that they had the right type of grass and the right type of water that they need, and everything that they need. Really took care of them very, very well. That's why that was like a quality that Hashem was looking for in a leader. So that's why they were chosen to be leaders of the Jewish people. And Moshe had the same thing. And here we have the famous story of the burning bush, where Moshe ends up somehow at this bush that's burning. It's burning, but it's not being consumed. How did he get there? Various opinions, whether it was one sheep that ran away, chased that sheep till he came to the burning bush, whether he was looking for good grass to pasture his sheep and he found the burning bush. But either way, he ends up at the burning bush. And over here, suddenly he hears a voice. He's looking at this bush and he sees a very interesting phenomenon, that there is a fire, it's burning, but it's not being consumed. It's almost like the story of Hanukkah, right? There's a fire, but the oil is not being consumed. There's a fire that's not being consumed. So he's looking at it, and then he hears a voice. Moshe, take off your shoes. This is a holy place. God speaks to Moshe. God speaks to Moshe from a burning bush. One of the explanations for that is because God was telling Moshe, it was a thorn bush. It's not, who wants to be thrown into a thorn bush? It's prickly, right? It's not comfortable. It's painful. And the message was, I'm in pain, just like the Jewish people are in pain. This past week, I took my kids. We took our kids out a little bit out of town, and we went to Austin for a few days. Austin, Texas. Side note: if you're looking for a nice place to go with your kids, great, beautiful parks, Austin, Texas. We really enjoyed. Um, so one of the things that we noticed over there, actually pretty interesting, is that we were driving. We went to Johnson City. That's like an hour west of Austin, and we noticed that there's a lot of cactus over there. I mean, I always thought cactus was, I think, that grows like in the desert, but it's a lot of greenery. There's a lot of wineries over there. There's an olive orchard. I mean, there's a lot of, and then there's cactus. Um, and then we saw some cactus fruit there we brought home. Um, and I made the big mistake. I was looking at the cactus. I'm like, hey, there's a spot where I could touch where there's no thorns, right? And I could just feel it and see how it feels. I still got some stuff in my fingers. Those things are impossible to get out, those thorns. But either way, the point is, it's thorns. And when thorns get into your body, it's very painful. God was sending a message to Moshe just by using a thorny bush to use to speak to Moshe through that. That itself was a message to Moshe. But over here begins a 7-day dialogue. For 7 days, Moshe and God are having this conversation. Right? You may think that God speaks to you and says, do something. You're going to jump and do it. I mean, who's not going to do it? God himself is speaking to me. God speaks to Moshe and he tells Moshe, I want you to go to Pharaoh and speak to Pharaoh. But Moshe doesn't take it. Moshe has excuse after excuse why I can't do it. And I want to read just a little bit of that inside. We're going to be on page. So it begins with chapter 3 at page 354, 355. Chapter 3 of Shemos of Exodus. The first thing that God tells him after he says, remove your shoes because you're standing in a holy place. He says, I am God. I am God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he says, I've seen the pain of your nation, of my nation in Egypt, and their cries that came from their great pain. And I'm there. I'm gonna take them out of Egypt. And I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell Pharaoh that the time has come. The God of the Jews is here. We're taking them out of Egypt. So what's Moshe's first response? Moshe first says, me? Who am I? I should go. Like, from all people, you're choosing me? And God says, I'll be with you. So Moshe says, okay, but I'm going to come to the Jewish people. They're going to ask me, what's his name? Who's this God? What should I tell them? The God says, I am who I am. I'll be with who I'll be, right? Don't worry, it's me. And he says, go, and everything will be good. You make signs, right? He gives them a whole drasha, a whole thing about what's going to happen. The Jewish people are going to leave, going to Egypt. And then Moshe continues, says Moshe doesn't accept that. Moshe says, but what if they don't believe me? What do they think I'm lying? Who are you? And the God really spoke to you? Prove it. So God says, okay, I'll give you these different signs that you could give to the Jewish people. You could change the water into blood and things like that. He gives them 3 signs that they'll know that you're saying the truth. And after all that, Moshe says, I have a speech impediment. I don't speak clearly. I can't be the one to speak to Pharaoh. And then God said again, God gets a little angry. He says, who gives the ability to speak? I'm the one that gives people the ability to speak. Don't worry, I'll be with you. But then he says, your brother will help you out with speaking. And eventually he's convinced and he goes to Pharaoh. His brother Aaron, and he goes to Pharaoh. So this whole dialogue back and forth, the Torah just gives us a few verses over here. But truthfully, it was a 7-day discussion. For 7 days, God was trying to convince Moshe, go to Pharaoh, you're the one, it's all going to work out, etc., etc. So I want to read a little bit inside to kind of to understand a little bit of what they were saying. What was this back and forth between Moshe and God? So I want to start on verse 11, on page 357. Verse 11. Vayom Moshe le'Elokim. Moshe speaks to God. Mi anoichi ki'ilech al parei. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? If I should be the one to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. What was Moshe saying here? So Rashi explains that Moshe was really arguing. He says, who am I? I'm just a simple shepherd. How could I be the one to speak to kings, to speak to Pharaoh? I'm not in that category. I'm not that type of person. I'm just a simple person. How could I speak to a king? And then he says, and I should take the Jewish people out of Egypt. What special merit did the Jewish people have that they should be taken out of Egypt? And to that, God answers in verse 12. Vayomer, and God said, I am going to be with you. Which that was an answer to his first question. Who are you to speak to kings? Don't worry about you. I'm with you. God's speaking with you. That itself should give you the confidence that you can speak to a king. And what type of merit do the Jewish people have? This is the sign. When you take the Jewish people out of Egypt, you're going to come to this mountain, the Mount Sinai, and you're going to serve God on this mountain. So why should the Jewish people leave Egypt? Because they have to serve God on Mount Sinai. So then comes the next question that Moshe says. Moshe says to God, I come to the Jewish people. I'm going to tell them that the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they're going to ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? I want to ask a simple question. Moshe had many arguments over here. What is this argument? The Jewish people are in pain. They're dying. They have so much sorrows. They have all the problems in the world. They're crying out to God. Like as the Torah just mentioned, that they're crying out to God, asking God to save them. Moshe comes and says, listen, guys, you won't believe it. God revealed himself to me. He told us the time is now. We're leaving Egypt. Who of the Jewish people would ask, God, what's God's name? What type of question is that? Why would the Jewish people ask, who is God? What's God's name? I mean, the other questions, okay, if they're going to ask, prove it that God spoke to you. Okay, I get it. You want to make sure he's not an imposter, because it's a real thing. But what is his name? I mean, who cares? God is God. Like, it's like a philosophical discussion now. Let's discuss God's names. God has various names. So which name of God will reveal himself to you? I mean, who cares? It's not a class right now, right? We're not studying the Kabbalah of God's names, which is a fascinating discussion, by the way. But why now? Like, this is not the time for it. It's not the time for it. Now is the time. God told you that we're leaving Egypt. Great, let's celebrate. What do we have to do? What does he want from us? Right? This is not the discussion now. Why is Moses saying that I'm going to come to the Jewish people and I'm going to tell them that God of your fathers have sent me, that we're leaving Egypt? They're going to ask me, what is his name? What should I tell them? Okay, so that's something we got to get back to. And what's God's response? Verse 14. And God says to Moshe that you want to know my name, Eheye Asher Eheye, which is a name which is a little hard to translate. Because what is this name? It means I will be what I will be. Is that a name? Is that a description? What's God's response? I mean, there are many names to God, right? We have Elohim, we have Adonai. There are many other names, Shakai, Kale. There are many names that the Torah uses to describe God, and each name has a different meaning to it. This name, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, this is the only place where it's mentioned. There's no other mention in the entire Torah of this name. What's the meaning of this name? Is it a name? Is it a name? And why did God respond to Moshe with this name? What? This name they're going to recognize? Oh, that's the name that we're looking for, right? We want to know what name it is. Oh, it's a name that no one heard of before. So what's Moshe's question? And what's God's response? Vayomer Kosamar, this is the way you should tell the Jewish people. Ehyeh shlochani aleichem. This Ehyeh, I will be. This is the one who has sent me to you. So what's the question? What's the answer? So there are various commentaries. So the Nachmanides has an interesting commentary that he says that the different names of God represent different attributes of God, whether it is compassion, whether it is judgment, whether it is kindness. And the question was, what name are you coming with? Is this a God of judgment? Is this a God of compassion? Is it a God of kindness? That was really their question, and that was their answer. And God was answering them, Ehyeh, which is compassion, which is basically concealed compassion. So therefore, it doesn't seem like God is being compassionate, but ultimately it's coming from God's compassion. But the Rebbe has a beautiful explanation to this dialogue, to this question. What's their name and what the answer is? I will be who I will be. Because Rashi, in his commentary, explains what's the meaning of I will be who I will be, is that God was actually just telling Moshe that I will be in all of their pain and all of their exiles and all of their enslavements. I'm always there with them. I'm there with their tzara, with their difficulties. So what was the question? What was the answer? So one of the explanations is as follows. Moshe had a very, very powerful question. And Moshe knew the Jewish people well. And he says, I know that this is something that bothers me. The moment I come to the Jewish people, who have been suffering for many, many, many years, and I tell them, listen up, guys. You won't believe it. God revealed himself to me. And he told me that he remembers you. He knows who you are. He heard your cry. And the time has come. We're leaving Egypt. You know what the first question they're going to ask me? Before prove it. Before this, the first question that comes on the mind is, who is this God that you're talking about? Who is this God that sees our pain for so many years and is quiet? We've been in pain for almost 100 years. It's already a generational thing. We've been born into this. All we know is enslavement. All we know is that we have haters that want to kill us, that want to torture us, that want to slave us. That's all we know about. And you're telling me that all these years that we've been crying out to God, God has been listening to us and hasn't done anything? What is this God? What is his name? What type of God is this? That was their question. It was a question that was coming out of their pain. You're telling me God heard us all these years and was quiet? What's his name? What type of person? What type of God is this? That was the question. It wasn't a philosophical question. Tell me what name God has. It was an emotional question. How could there be a God that hears us all these years and is quiet? How does this God function? What's his name? What type of God is this? That was their question. And Moshe says, "Mo oimar aleim, what should I respond to them?" I have the same question. It's a good question. I don't have a response to that question. God, you're revealing yourself to me now after so many years of pain and suffering. What is your name? What should I tell them? How is this possible for so many years The Jewish people were suffering and you were quiet. That was their question. What's God's answer? It's a good question. And it's a question that Moshe had then, the Jewish people had then, but many of us have today as well. When we go through pain and suffering, whether on a micro level, on a personal level, personal suffering, a family is going through pain, a family is going through a difficult time, or whether it's a more of a macro, and when the Jewish people are going through something difficult, as we have just went through something difficult just a few weeks ago. And the question is the same question. Ma Shemoi, what is God's name? What should I tell them? How is God seeing all this pain and suffering and being quiet? How is he allowing this? That's the question. What's the God's answer? It's not a name. You didn't ask for a specific name. I'm not giving you a specific name. It's a description. You know where I was? I was there with them. Rashi says, I was there. I am there with them in their pain, in their exile, in their torture, in their suffering. And Asher Ehya, and I will be with them in future exiles. Whenever the Jewish people are going through pain and suffering, you know where I am? I'm there, right there with them. It wasn't a philosophical question. It wasn't a philosophical answer. The question wasn't, why do we have pain? Because Moshe knew we'll never understand God's ways. It wasn't a question of why. Why did God allow this to happen? But the question was, where? Where were you all this time? And the answer was, you know where I was right there with you. That's where I was. And I will always be there with you. And even though perhaps in future times there will be suffering again, Asher Ehya, I will also be there with you. You should always know I will always be there with you. Moshe at one point says, God, why should we mention future suffering? They have enough right now. God says, you're right. And then that's where he finishes off. Ehya, just tell them I was always there with you. You don't have to also mention that I will be there with them in the future. Why mention that there will be suffering again in the future? But that was his response. Where was I? I was there with you. Why is a different question. Why is it really a philosophical discussion to know why is there bad things happening in the world, or is there bad things in this world? That's another question. But where is God? God is there with you. Ehya, Asher Ehya, God is always with you. In fact, God says, know where I am right now. Look, I'm in this burning bush. I am in pain with the Jewish people. For all these years, for whatever reason, God already decreed to Abraham, the Jewish people will have suffering. The Jewish people are going to be going through difficult moments. Originally, it was for 400 years. It ended up being less than that. But this was already decreed. For whatever reason. It wasn't a why question. That's not up to discussion now. I'm God. I know my ways. But where was I? I've never abandoned the Jewish people. And tell this to the Jewish people, God says. Moshe, you have this question? Answer the Jewish people. You want to know where I was there with them. They were crying. I heard their cry. For whatever reason, I couldn't stop it. I couldn't answer their cry then, but I was always there with them. It's like a parent who takes a child to a surgery, or even less than that, right? They get a shot. They have to get their vaccination shots. And the child is crying. It's so painful. Look at the parents. It says, how are you doing this to me? How are you allowing this terrible person in this lab coat take this prickly needle and put it into my skin? This is terrible. And what does this parent say? The parent says, I'll give you a hug. I'll hold your hands. But we're doing it. You're too young to understand why we're doing this and how this is good for you. And this is for your health. You're not at this point, you won't understand this. It's not a philosophical discussion right now. But where am I? I'm not leaving you alone with the doctor, with the nurse. I'm holding your hand. We're doing this together. That's what God answers Moshe. Where am I? I'm holding their hands. I'm in pain just as they are in pain. It's not easy for me either. We're doing this together. As we say, Shechinta begalusa. When the Jewish people are in exile, the Shekhinah, God himself, is also in exile with us together. That's where we are. So this was the dialogue. The dialogue Moshe was asking, where were you all these years? Mashmai, what's your name? What type of God abandons the Jewish people? And God says, abandon them. God forbid. I was always there with them. Holding their hand. And this is something obviously very powerful for us as well. Again, on a personal level, global level. Where is God? God is always. How does God allow this to happen? We know that we don't understand God's ways. But where was he and where is he? He's always here with us. When we discuss on a more of a macro level, where people that go through many hardships or difficulties, and unfortunately, many people are don't have these miraculous stories of how they were saved, etc. But at the same time, hearing the stories of survivors who were saved, you see that there was a hand of God involved in these moments. Whether it is on October 7th, where you see certain people that clearly saw the hand of God at the very moment of survival. Unfortunately, many people didn't see it clearly, and obviously we don't understand God's ways. But just one story that comes to mind, and I forget his name, but one of the first responders, on October 7th, and we know the chaos that happened on the first few hours after the attack, or for whatever reason, I think now they're still trying to investigate to understand why this happened and how it was such a slow response, a slow organized response to the attack. But the first responders were all pretty much on their own initiative. And even many of the soldiers who went in, they didn't get clear instructions exactly where to go, what to do. They just went on their own. They realized that this is something that's happening and they have to stop this immediately. And, people went in. Thank God they were able to stop them. And unfortunately, many people lost their lives, just many of the first responders. And there's one of them who, I don't remember if he was a civilian or if he was a soldier, a police officer. I think he was a civilian. And he went in and he was able to take out many of the terrorists. He saved dozens of lives. And at one point, he came face to face with some terrorists, and he was hiding. He was hiding in a ditch, some type of hole, ditch. He was able to find. He put some branches on top of him, and he was hiding there. And I think he ran out of ammunition. So he ran out of ammunition. He had to go down to hide. But then maybe it was the Israeli army, others came, and they were also doing what they had to do. And at one point, they found him, and they just assumed that he was a terrorist. So they started shooting at him. And he's starting to scream, but with all the chaos, they weren't able to hear him. Until at one point, he was wearing tzitzit. He grabbed the tzitzit and he showed them, look, I'm wearing tzitzit. And at that moment, they stopped and he was able to be saved. He literally, his life was saved. And many of these stories where people, even at the darkest moments, seemingly, they saw God's hand and literally saved their life. Just to conclude, going back to the Holocaust, obviously a big question that we always have: where was God in the Holocaust? And again, the question is, where was God in the Holocaust? God was there with the Jewish people. Why it happened is obviously another discussion. So there was this great leader of the Jewish people known as the Kloisenberger Rebbe. The Kloisenberger Rebbe was a Holocaust survivor. And he went through a very, very difficult few years of the Holocaust. He had a very large family, actually, a wife and 12 kids. He had a large family who were all wiped out. I think every single one of them, all killed in the Holocaust. He was sent to camps. And at one point, he got a wound in his arm. trying to remember if exactly how this wound came about, whether he fell or he got shot or whatever it was. He had this terrible wound in his arm, and he was basically bleeding to death. And he went to, I think, Mengele himself, and he basically knew that um, there's no way he's surviving this. And he made a promise. And he said that if he survives this, survives the Holocaust, he's coming out and doing something positive for the Jewish people. He has to do something to counter this terrible atrocities. I think he was sent to Mengele, but he didn't actually go to Mengele. He knew that there's no way that he's actually going to come out of there alive. So on his own, he started treating the wound. What did he do? First of all, he needed a tourniquet, right? Because it was a terrible wound. So he found like leaves or branches that he was able to tie around his arm, and that stopped the bleeding. And then he was just trying to figure out some natural stuff with leaves and grass to deal with the wound. And eventually, he survives. He got to Israel, and he started a hospital. I think in Netanya. He started a hospital, especially for obviously for the Israelis who needed help, because in having in mind, because he was wounded and he had to treat himself during the Holocaust in the camp, so therefore he's starting this hospital in Israel. The point is that someone that going through such difficult moments, but is able to see that there's God with him, even in the most difficult moments, and therefore he's able to pay that back to the people after he left. So that's, I think, the message from the Parsha, at least from this dialogue in the Parsha of Moshe and the Jewish people. That Moshe was asking God, how did you abandon us? God was giving us his most powerful words. I'm not giving you a name, God, Elohim, Kael, Shakai. It's not a name game over here. Where was I? You should always know that whatever happens to the Jewish people, I am always with them. That's the message that God tells Moshe in this Parsha. I'll leave you with that. Have a Shavua Tov, have a good week, and we should see you next week. Okay, let me correct that.